Hello everyone, I'm going to tell you a little story about a paranormal situation that occurred with me probably about 20 odd years ago now, maybe. Yeah, about 20 years ago. I used to live in a little village in Warwickshire. And the place was literally probably not very well developed or not extremely built on. For a good few hundreds of years. And then my house was built and a few more houses behind us was built. But this was basically just a very small development in building, because around the whole area was just open countryside with a few poignant landmarks dotted about. So over the road from us was a very, very old public house. And behind us, there used to be a school and also a very, very, very small chapel. So our house was situated on the old school grounds, and in front of our house was a graveyard which was connected to the chapel. A very small graveyard with a handful of people in there. And across the road from us, in the early 60s or 70s, I believe, there was a village hall built. And then behind the village hall, there was a tiny sort of like playground area that was for the new housing development. And then behind this playground area was an old priest park wood, it was known as. Now this is an ancient wood, over 600 years or more old, and it had been there since probably day dot, and it's still there to this day. And behind our houses there was only probably about 3 houses that were original, and one of them was the old schoolhouse. So it was still standing, but it was now known as, I think it's called Old School Cottage. Now the chapel had since been pulled down, and there was a one single sort of like detached house built on top of that house, on that land where that chapel used to be. And the perimeters of our back garden backed onto this kind of like vicinity. So as you looked out my back window to the right, my next door neighbour, there was only 2 of us at the front of this close. And then to the right was this old schoolhouse. So literally our property was built on this little patch of land where the children used to play. And as I say, as you looked out my front window, you looked straight onto the main road leading to Warwick from Knowle. And this was literally a very, main thoroughfare for traffic. But there was quite a lot of land in front of our house leading up to the main Warwick Road, and I found it incredibly peaceful there. Now, as I said, this old very, very old public house was still there. And I had some photographs actually, which I'm going to show you, of what this old property looked like back in the day, and what the area looked like when we was actually living there. And I'll also show you an aerial shot of the location that I had done when I was living there. They came around asking if we wanted aerial shots, so I bought one. So give you a kind of idea of the layout. Well, as you look out, like I say, of the original like front door, your front window to the lounge, you could see the public house and the road, and then in front there was an expanse of land with a tree on it leading up to the main road. So it kind of like the close backed off the main road a little bit, where the buildings were only just starting to be built, just backed off the main road a little bit. And that would be because there used to be a area of land in front of our house that was literally part of where the graves were. And as you stood on my front doorstep and looked to the right, you could see there was some bungalows that had been built. These bungalows were all part of this development when our houses were built. And it was for elderly people. Independent, but elderly people. And they had tiny, tiny, tiny little back gardens. Literally a postage stamp back garden, as people would say, a postage size stamp back garden. And in probably about 20 years ago, I was awake at 4 o'clock in the morning. And at that time, I used to smoke. And the worst part about this was I couldn't go back to sleep. So I went downstairs at 4 o'clock in the morning and walked out the front door, because I never smoked in the house. And I literally walked towards the edge of the road from my house, directly in front of me. So I got out my door, walked with the door still open, only a little, just enough for me to get back in. And there's nobody about, it's quiet. There's not even any traffic coming, there's nothing. It's so quiet because it's early. It was still dark and it was relatively cold, so I was wearing my dressing gown. And as I walked, I lit up a cigarette and I walked in front of me and got to the edge of the mouth of the close, and that's where the little tiny kind of like curb area curved round like that into our mouth of our close, and then went straight in front of our house, about 100 yards, I'd say, away from our house. So I'm walking across this piece of grass underneath the tree, got to the curb, and I'm smoking this cigarette, and I'll turn round to my right, just like so. So I'm looking ahead at the pub, and then I'm turning to my right and I'm looking straight up the main road, and it's like it goes up in a hill just a little, because we're in a dip it's known as Devil's Dip. And as I was looking across that way towards the hill, I caught my eye. The end bungalow, the back garden, the fence was only tiny. So you could kind of like, the first bit of fence, you could kind of like slightly see movement. And then the next bit of fence up was probably about 4 foot high. So I caught at the corner of my eye as I turned round again after noticing this movement. In this back garden, to my actual surprise, hovering sort of like above the fence line, with that much of the skirt of this apparition beneath the fence line, so you couldn't see the feet. But so they were right down, but up off the ground. So they were like, they must have been about 3 foot off the ground. So that 1 foot of person was beneath the fence line, but the rest of them were up. And they were high up, but they were gliding. This, I'll tell you what it looked like. Gliding across like so. From the back of the bungalow, they literally popped up. They were gliding like that. And it's very, very tiny, this length of garden. Like I say, it's like a tiny, minute square of garden at the back of these bungalows. And as they were gliding, I could see they were pure white. It was a lady. She was pure white. And the only way I can describe it was, if you've ever seen the film Poltergeist, where the ghosts come down the stairs and they're all doing this, like the hair, the clothing was all twisting and turning like that, and the hair was up twisting and turning like that, but reaching out like that, and it was just pure white, and it looked animated, so it looked like it was in water. It looked like it was a person in water when you see them going down in the water, slow motion, and all the hair and the clothing twisting around them, but in air, basically. And she was pure white, and she was an elderly lady, very elderly lady. Very, very long white hair, which was, like I say, was twisting and turning and moving around her. Her clothing was doing the same. She got like this gown on, and I could see her hand was reached out like that forward as she was moving, as she began to move. So it was almost like she was reaching forward, but then gliding at the same time, with all of this hair and this clothing just literally like swirling around off her body, but like coming back to her, like as if it was reaching out, morphing out and twisting. It was just absolutely phenomenal. And she just, when she got so far down this little garden, and she was still in the same height, going like so above the, literally like that, above the fence. And her intention in her face, she was looking dead centre, straight ahead. She never moved her head. She was looking straight ahead, as if she got an intention to go down the back behind the house. And like I say, for her to be hovering off the floor like that, and the clothes and the hair in that manner, was what you'd think of as a typical kind of like ghost apparition. But I saw her with my own eyes, and I stood and watched her. And I just could not believe what I was seeing. This woman gliding across that garden in such a manner, with all of that movement, with her hair and her clothes. But it was the hair and the clothes that actually made me gasp, because they were reaching really far out off the body, probably about 1.5 meters away. So we were morphing off her and coming back. So it was almost like she was extending herself off her hair. Like she got strands of hair, like literally like hair, like chunks of hair like that. And it was all just floating. And the clothes were the same. So the bottom of her sleeves, the bottom of the bottom of her skirt was pulling outwards and upwards and rolling. And it was just absolutely phenomenal. And when I looked at her and watched her, I thought she got such intention in her face for whatever she wanted to do or where she was going. But she just didn't look like, she was kind of solid but white. And then when the stretch on the hair, the movement on the hair, that was tapering off into like very, very see-through white. And part of her was kind of like see-through. She was just extremely intriguing. She, as an apparition goes, she was probably one of the most intriguing I've seen. I mean, of course, I've seen many, but that one really struck a chord with me, because I thought that's a typical kind of like ghost, but you never see them moving. You only see them standing still. If somebody sees an apparition, you'll see them mainly standing still somewhere, flashing in the atmosphere and then flashing out. But this one was gliding, and the way she was moving, it was so graceful. But I was just in awe of it. I didn't take my eyes off her. I never stopped looking at her as I was watching her. And I literally was there on my own at 4 o'clock in the morning. No one else around. Stood in my dressing gown, standing on the curb, literally where I got to the curb. I was moving my feet like that on the curb, backwards and forwards, like, you know, as if I was on the edge of the road, like a little kid would if they were playing back in the Victorian period, you know. And then smoking this cigarette. And then when I turned round and saw a glimpse of her, and then turned round again and properly watched her, I was literally stood on the spot, outside, in between this public house and our house, on that stretch of road by the main Warwick Road. And as I say, she was on the end bungalow. That's where she was, in the back garden, which was closest to the original. It used to be a post office. The building now, I believe, is, well, I don't even know what it is now, because it's like many years ago, but it used to be a nursery. They used it as a nursery, but it was like the village hall, and they used to have the post office in it. So it was literally the end bungalow behind or in front of the main entrance to the village hall at Chadwick End. That's where I saw it. Now, it's not the only sighting that I've seen. I've seen others, and there's other stories around that area. But I just wanted to show you a few photographs in this little chat and story time, basically, and also just to share what I saw, the apparition of this lady. And to this day, I'm not sure who this lady is, but I do know that there's other situations and apparitions that I've actually come across, and other people, and we've got sort of like history, recorded historical documents that can equate to what those people, those apparitions are. But this one, no, I just don't know. She seemed ancient, and but saying that, she was wearing this white dress, gown. It could have almost have been a white nightgown, but it was long sleeved. So if we're going to put a time on that, that could have been Edwardian, Victorian. It could have been anything from that time. So, or it could have even been slightly before that, Georgian. I'm not sure, but with all that being said, she was 100%. This woman was 100% trying to show herself, and with me being the only person present in the vicinity and the whole village asleep, literally no cars on the road, you know, no lights on, other than the odd one here and there, you know, like a landing light probably where people left it on to go the loo. But like I say, it's open. There's not many properties on that front at all, so to actually know that I was there on my own and I saw her, it was really, really, really exciting to know that I'd had that kind of like apparition experience on my own there, in such a strange circumstance. I was literally going out just to have a cigarette outside the house, very, very quiet. But you know what they say about that time, that the layer, the veil for electromagnetic frequency around the earth is very thin. Half-3 is known as that particular time where it stretches in the stratosphere, and it can cause kind of like things to go on. So more apparitions are seen at that time, but usually we're all in bed, and that's why you hear everybody say, I'm in bed and I saw this person at the end of my bed. Well, I was actually outside. But even so, it could have something to do with the fact that I captured that or saw that with my own eyes, witnessed that at that time. So I just wanted to share with you. Okay. There'll be another soon. Bye.
In the paranormal, feel, see, and listen.